All right, so chapter 2. Chapter 2, we are finally going to kind of get into some math, okay, for this class. So chapter 2, we're going to talk about frequency distributions, all right? So when you're working with a large data set, it's often helpful to organize and summarize data by constructing a table called a frequency distribution. Well, if I've got a group of like 10 people, it's pretty easy to kind of add those numbers up, do what I have to do. What if I have like 200 people and I'm trying to figure out what the average is? Do you really want to? It's difficult to look at all that data, try to assess what you have, right? That's the purpose of this frequency distribution. It's going to allow us to look at a large group of data and see trends, okay? So, frequency distribution helps us understand the nature of the distribution of a data set. So it shows how a data set is partitioned among all of several categories or classes by listing all of the categories along with the number of data values in each of the categories. So we're going to work with this data set today. We're going to look at the pulse rates of females and males. We're going to first look at the females, okay? So we're going to actually use both of these rows. So these two rows together make up our female pulse rates. So if you're just kind of looking quickly, can you quickly spot the high? What's the high female pulse rate? Okay, so that's not too hard to spot. What about maybe the low?
64? 60.
What do we think the low might be? 60. Okay, that's again, that took a little bit of time. Do you think you could kind of figure out the middle ground? Ooh, it gets kind of murky there, right? Okay. So again, that's going to be the purpose of the frequency distribution table. So here's what a complete one looks like. Now I'm going to actually walk you through how we get this. So right now, just look. Don't copy anything, okay? Just, this is what one looks like. Well, okay, I've got the pulse rate of females. So I have this nice title describing what you're looking at. I have these classes. Notice I have, how many classes do I have? Yeah, 7, right? I've got 7 different groupings here. And then, okay, I have what's called the frequency. That tells me how many people actually fell in that class. So now, could you easily tell me where kind of most of the people fall? Sure you can. What's the answer? 70, 79. I got 14 votes, right? And in fact, would it be fair to say that most of the people fall from 60 to what? That's almost everybody, isn't it? Right? So do you see how this frequency table makes it really easy to kind of understand and assess our data? Right? So, okay. Definition here, the frequency for a particular class is the number of original values that fall into that class. Let me give you your first symbol. This class, we'll just do a side note. We stop for a hot second. Symbols are huge, y'all, in this class. Okay? Again, suggestion, make some flashcards, find an app, do something so you can try to remember these symbols. So your very first one today that I'm going to give you is the symbol for frequency. It's a little F, like a kind of a tail on the end, right? That's your symbol for frequency. I am actually going to do a pause here because I do want to show you one other thing in D2L. Let me pause this real quick. In D2L, and I'm so sorry, this is probably a little disjointed, but under course materials, there actually is a symbols section. If you click on that and click on that worksheet, here are all of the symbols that you'll have to know in this course. And so what I'll do is, as you learn them, okay, Let's see what's happening here. Here we go. So this worksheet has all of the symbols. So like right now, you just learned just the third one there, the symbol for frequency, okay? So I will kind of go through this semester and tell you, oh, we're learning this one now, learning this one now. But if you want to see a complete list, you do have access to that in your D2L, okay? All right, sorry for the side note there. Let's now go back. Okay, so that again is your symbol for frequency. So, let's talk about the other definitions for looking at this table. We have what's called the lower class limits. Well, what's that? Remember that each of these categories were our classes, right? So the very first number in those classes, that's called the lower class limit, all right? And then you have the other one. Any guesses what it'll be called? The upper class limits, yeah. That's your higher number in your classes, okay? Class width. By definition, this is the difference between two consecutive lower class limits. So what does that mean? What's the difference if I'm going from 60 to 70? 10, right? Oh, what do you notice? I have that same difference between what? All of my lower class limits, right? That's how I actually use this class width to build this table. So again, I will tell you, I'll talk about how we get that number in a second, but I want to just show you the class width. That's the difference between your lower class limit. Also, it's the difference between your upper as well, right? Okay? Okay. I'm going to stop talking about this, and I'm going to stop here. I want to go to your worksheet, and we're going to talk about how do they get that frequency table, okay? One thing, if you've got your highlighter, okay, you probably want to circle, star, highlight this. You're going to have to know, how do you construct the class width? Well, here it is right here. You will find class width by taking the maximum number minus the minimum number, and you will divide by the number of classes. So you'll divide by the number of classes. That'll be always given to you in the problem, okay? There is one more thing. What do you see in bold with heaps of exclamation marks?
No, always round up.
Always round up. Let's talk about what the word always means. So let's pretend that you've done your math and you've worked out your formula there, and you got that your class width was 9.8. What do you think your actual answer is? 10, right? Good. What if you do math and you get 6.2?
6.
Oh, this is what always means. Always round up. So if I have 6.2, what's your real answer?
7.
Thank you. Yeah. One more question for you. What if you do your math and you land exactly on 8? What do you think your answer is?
8. 9.
Always, always, always round up for class width only. Don't apply this the rest of your life. Okay? This is the class width rules. So if I had 8, my real answer is 9. Are we getting that now?
Why is that?
The answer is because sometimes there'll be cases where if you don't always round up, you'll leave out some of your data. Now, not always. Okay? Sometimes it'll still fit, but to make sure that all your data fits, we always round up. That's the reason why, okay? All right, so let's now look at my problem here. So this says, use the pulse rates of females in the above table to construct a frequency distribution table, and they tell me to use how many classes?
7.
7. So, okay, let me erase this. Let me move my paper up so I can do all my math with you guys. All right, so I'm going to use my formula, and my formula for class width, I'm just going to rewrite it. It was max minus the min divided by what?
The number of classes.
The number of classes. So, okay, tell me what is the max again for the females? 124. Minus, what's the min again we said?
60.
60. And the number of classes given to us was?
7.
7. Now notice, I put my numerator in parentheses. I did that because when I come to my calculator, that's how I want to enter that. I want to use parentheses around my numerator. I'm going to say parentheses. I'm going to do 124 minus 60. Close the numerator up, right? Then divide by what?
7.
7. Press enter. So, okay, I have approximately 9.14, blah, blah, blah. However, I know that my real answer is what?
10, Dad.
That's how I got 10 as the class width in the PowerPoint. You will need to memorize that formula. That formula will not be given to you when it comes time for our quiz over chapter 2, when it comes time for our first test. I won't give that to you. That's one of the few things that you'll have to have memorized in this class is a class width formula. Again, what is that? Max minus min divided by the number of classes, and then you always do what? All right. Okay, so we've got the class width. How do we actually make this table? Well, you will take your minimum number. That's going to be your first lower class limit. What's the min number again?
60.
60. So I'm going to put 60 right there. Now, I want you to listen carefully to this next part. This is where a lot of mistakes are made. You're going to build your table by building all of the lower class limits first. You're going down the paper. How do I do that? I'm going to add the class width to that number. So 60 plus 10 is what?
7.
That's my next lower class limit. Again, I'm going what? I'm going down the paper. Do it again. Let's now add that class width again. What's 70 plus 10?
80.
All right. Then I have what? 90, 100, 110, then 100 and what?
20.
I do not go across. You go across, it makes it wrong. Okay? Go down. Now, let's go back and get the upper class limits. Well, how do I do that? If this one starts at 70, what number do I have to end at to have this one start at 70? I need to stop at what number over here? 69. All right. You do that one time, and then here's the trick again. I want you now to add the class width now going down with the upper class limits. So automatically your next number is what?
79.
And then we have 89. Now some of y'all are saying I could just go one less. True, but let me show you something. So you can feel, I know one less than that. I know one less than, ooh, okay, that's wrong.
What do you mean one less?
So what's one number less than 80? 79. One less than 90 is what? 89. Okay. This is 109. This would be 100 and what? If you do it that way, what number goes here? I mean, you would be like, well, I guess in theory this would be 130, but see, that's why I say don't do that. Just do what? Get your 169 and then do what? Add the class with what? All the way down, then you have no problems, okay? So if I add plus 10 here, that's going to be what? 129, and we're done. So I want you to get your number. So the whole goal is get your top number of the column and then do what? Add what? Class with. Well, in this case it's 10. In other cases it'll be other numbers, right? Get your top number here, then add. Okay. So how do I then get the next part? Well, the first number that I have is a 76, right? Which class does that 76 fall in? Second one. I'm going to put a little tally mark. I'm going to mark it off. Where does the 72 fall? Same group. Oh, okay. That 88. Where's it go? Yeah, the third one. 60. Where does it go? First one. Y'all get the hang of this? You would go through every single number, and then however many tally marks you have, that's your frequency. Okay? So that's how they got 12 here, 14 here, 11, 1, 1, 0, and 1. So when I get finished, I would have 12 tally marks. Thus, I have 12 for the first class. Does that make sense? If you're going to kind of go through and do that whole thing. All right. That's just part, you guys, of a frequency table. We have some more things to learn. So let me just, I'm going to let y'all practice in a minute, so you don't have to keep going right now. You're going to do a whole one to practice in 1 second, all right? I need to teach you a couple other columns. So right now, you just learned how to get your what? Get the classes right. You've learned how to get your frequency. There are a couple more columns that we have to talk about now. Let me go back to the PowerPoint. You guys can now kind of, I think, go down to the next page here. I'm going to erase this real quick. We're now going over to page 2 with our information. So we're going to talk about class midpoints, relative frequencies, and cumulative frequency. That's where we're going to go now. So let's talk about class midpoints. Sometimes we don't want to have ranges of numbers. Sometimes I want to have just one number represent each class. How do I do that? The midpoint. Midpoints can be found by adding up the class limits and dividing by 2, right? I want to find the average of the class. So I'm going to take 60 plus 69, divide by 2. The middle number is what? 64.5. Now, I could say 70 plus 79 divided by 2 is? Okay, 74.5. But I have a little bit, if you're into trying to figure out faster methods, anybody notice something between my different midpoints? What's the width between these?
Class width.
Ah, the class width. So really, you could just find your midpoint for the first class and then do what? Add the class width all the way down. If you don't, if you feel like that's just too much for me, That's okay. You just do it the regular way each time, right? What's the regular way? Add them up, divide by 2. Okay? That's how you get your class midpoints. Any questions over the midpoints? Okay? Got 2 more. 2 more to learn. The next one, okay, yeah, that's all the reasons. We can discuss that later. The next one is the relative frequency distribution. Sometimes I don't want to know just the number. I may want to know the percentage. So we learned earlier that 12 women fell in the first class, right? What if I want to know, like, what percent is that? What percent of my women fell in the first class? That's what relative frequency is, okay? So how do they get those numbers? Let me show you. What you will do to get your relative frequency. Hold on, let me do this. Let me put all my F's over here so y'all can see it. Is that my pen? So F's. What did I have? What were my numbers? I had 12, y'all call out to me. 12, and what was the rest of them?
14.
Okay. 11, okay.
1.
Okay.
1.
Okay.
0.
All right. All right. So how do I get the percent? First of all, you need to find out your total sample size. Well, let me tell you a way to do that. Once you have your frequency column, you can just do what? Yeah, add them up, because remember, this should represent all of your data, right? So, okay, get your calculator. Let's quickly add up. 12 plus 14 plus 11 plus 1 plus 1 plus 0 plus 1
is 40.
40. That is my total sample size, right? So, okay, how do I get the relative frequency? You're going to take the frequency for that class, and you're going to divide that by the total number. That gives you your percentage. So let me show you. Bring back out your calculator. 12 divided by 40. That gives us what?
0.3.
0.3. Now, I'm going to tell you this. You can do decimal. You can do percent. I really don't care. Some people are really sticklers on that. I will say this. However you do your answer to make it easy for me for grading, give me at least 2 decimal places, okay? So what do I mean by that? So if I have the 0.30, give me the 0.30, okay? Now, how do I make that a percent? You would take your answer, and then you would do what? Times it by 100, and that's how the PowerPoint gets 30%.
Or just move the decimal 2 places.
You're exactly right. Or you can just take your decimal, and you can go 1, 2, and then I get my 30%. So there's how we get our percentages. So one more time, the next one, what do you do? Now, there's no shortcuts here, y'all. Okay, you can't add 10, all right? You have to do each one individually. So the next one, you're going to do what? 14 divided by what number? 40. Okay, come over here. 14 divided by 40. Okay, oh, okay. That's how they get the 0.35. Oh, yeah, 35%. You do that for each one. That's your relative frequency. Is that okay? All right, we've got one more column to learn. So one more column.
Where did the 40 come from again?
Sure. The 40 comes from, that's your total.
Number of times. Okay.
That is your total right here. This is your total sample size. And I'm going to add up the frequencies. Any other questions about that one? Okay, good. Next one, cumulative. We discussed this first day. What does cumulative mean again? When I told y'all how to cumulative finals in, what does that mean to you? Yeah, all of it. Okay, right? So cumulative, same kind of thought process here, means that I'm going to be collecting all of the data as I go along. So watch this. This is the original. This is my original one right here, right? That's my frequency column. Okay, we know how to do that. So how do I get this cumulative frequency? Well, let's discuss this. In the very first class, I started out with how many women? How many women do I have in the very first class over here? 12. That's the first number I have there. By the time I get through with the second class, I now have 12 and the 14. Together, that makes what? Oh. By the time I get finished with my third class, I now have what? 12 plus 14 plus 11 gives me what? 37. I then come here. That's how I get the what? 38, right? What number should you have at the bottom down here? 40. Or we'll talk about it in general. What number better be there? It's 40 in this case. Your total sample size number better be this last number, because by the time you get here, you have used all of your what? All your data, right? That's a good checking way for you. Make sure this last number is your total sample size. Because by the time you keep adding on, that last class is the total number, right? Okay. So when I do a frequency distribution table for real, this is now what I'm talking about. A frequency distribution table looks like this, where I've got all the columns. You have to make the class limits. Now, technically, the tally one's not a real one. That's just kind of helpful for you guys, right?
Yeah.
So, here's the frequency. Here's the class what? Midpoints. Here's your relative frequency. Here's your cumulative frequency. So here is what I want you to do. If you need a quick break, you can do it now in a second, okay? I'm going to pause Tegrity. I want you now to use the male data. So you're going to use those two rows. You're going to use how many classes? 8. So your first step is to find the what? Class width. Yes, that's your first step. And then you will build and work through this. You can work with a neighbor. You can ask me questions. I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to pause Tegrity. Remember, when you're doing your class width, so class width, remember that's, and again, you want to get this memorized. Max minus min divided by the number of what? Classes. And so what was the max again? What y'all find? Ooh, I think 96 for the males is your highest number, so be careful. 96 minus what? 56 divided by 8. Now, some of y'all, when you did that in the calculator, which is what you're supposed to do, what number did you get from the calculator? You got 5. But you have to remember, what do you have to always do? So my actual real answer is 6. Is that okay? Okay. So then you should have took, what's the smallest number again, the mid number? You're going to put 56 in the very first spot there for your lower limit. And I'm going to now add what going down? All right. So 56 plus 6 is 62. I'm going what? Down the paper. Plus 6 again? 68, right? So that you guys should have 74. I'm going to help you out here. 80, 86, 92, I need 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Oh, I gave you the right number. 8 classes, okay. Somebody tell me, how did you get your first upper class limit? I'm going to go from 56 to what? Yes, because I have what number here? This one starts at 62. This one has to end at what? And now, what do? You add your class width going down again, right? So, okay, plus 6 going down. 67. What's next? 73, 79, 85, 91, 97. What's the last number there? 103. Because again, I am doing what? I'm adding the 6 going down the paper, not across, right? Does that make sense? Does that help? So that kind of gives you now a booster. This is what your class limit should look like. Keep going. Okay, so...
I didn't get to the cumulative frequency.
Well, that's okay. We'll work it out together. So after you kind of worked through and done all of your tallying, as a reminder, remember that the symbol for frequency is that F, right? So you should have, I think I checked most people's, 13, 7, 9, 2, 4, 4, 1, and 0. Right? And then you may want to get in the habit of going ahead and adding those up because you know you're going to need that number later, right? So the total sample size is the 40 there. Is that okay? Class midpoint. What did you do? You should have took that 56 plus the 61 and you should have divided by 2. That should give you 58.5 for the very first one, right? Now, you could do that all the way down. That's just fine. Or, remember, you can add what going down? The class width, which, yes, in this case is 6. So I could add 6 going down. So then you'll have 64.5, 70.5, 76.5, 82.5, what's this, 88.5, 94.5, and 100.5. Is that okay?
Yes.
Relative frequency, there's no shortcuts here, right? You have to take each individual frequency number and put that number over what?
40.
Yes, over your total number. So, okay, 13 over 40. Now, let me give you 2 things here. So, my normal instructions would say, make sure that you use 2 decimal places for relative frequency. Well, in this first example, the calculator gives you 0.325. So I'm okay with 2 things. You can either say 0.33, because that's 2 decimal places, right? Or you could say 32.50%, because again, you've also used what? 2 decimal places. And I know that they're not exactly the same, I'm aware of that, but I want you just to kind of, whatever you want, whatever you're comfortable with. A lot of people just keep the decimal and just keep going, right? But if you like percentages, I'm cool with that too, okay? So, you would have, so I'm going to give you both answers. So, again, you don't have to have both. Does everybody get what I'm saying? You just have just whatever, what is this? 0.03, I think, and then I have 0 totally. Or you could have 17. Now, notice this. If you do have the percent, you better make sure you have what? The percent sign. If you do decimal, you do not give me a percent sign, right? So it's your choice. Okay? Is that okay? Again, you're not doing both of these. You're just picking one, and you've got all the appropriate numbers here with it. All right. Cumulative. You start off with what number? The 13, right? I start off with my frequency number. And then what do I do for the next one? You add the next two together. So 13 plus 7 gives me what? 20. Great. And then you have 29, 31, 35, 39. And then I have 40. And then don't stop there. 40 plus 0 is still what?
40.
All right. There is your complete frequency distribution for the males. Is that okay? Okay, so I'm going to